The air on Volanis was always cold enough to freeze the moisture in a human's breath, creating small crystals that fell to the snow-covered ground like tiny diamonds. Captain Marcus Vance watched his exhaled breath dissipate in front of him as he surveyed the aftermath of the ambush. Bodies of Cthar warriors lay scattered across the ice field, their pale blue skin almost camouflaged against the frozen landscape. Their blood, an unusual shade of deep violet, created stark patterns on the pristine white snow. "All clear, Captain," Lieutenant Thorne reported, his voice crisp and businesslike over the comm. "We've neutralized the entire squad except for one. Female Cthar, wounded but alive." Marcus nodded, his expression hidden behind the thermal visor of his combat suit. "Location: Eastern Perimeter, sir. By the ice ridge." Marcus made his way through the battlefield, stepping over fallen Cthar warriors. The Ghost Stalkers, his elite reconnaissance unit, had executed the ambush with surgical precision. It was what they were trained to do, what they had been doing for the past 3 years on this frozen hellscape of a planet. As he approached the location, he saw her, a Cthar female warrior, tall and powerful despite her injuries. Her armor, adorned with the distinctive star patterns of what he recognized as the Star Song clan, was damaged in several places. Violet blood seeped from a wound in her side. 2 of his soldiers stood guard, weapons trained on her. The Cthar warrior was on her knees, but there was nothing submissive about her posture. Her back was straight, her head held high. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than most Cthar he'd encountered, almost luminescent against the stark white landscape. Her eyes, large and intense, were the color of the rare cryogems they were all fighting over, a deep, glowing turquoise. "Order, sir," one of the soldiers asked. "Do we terminate?" Standard protocol was clear: no prisoners. The Cthar rarely took any, and Terran High Command had adopted the same policy. This war had no room for mercy. Marcus approached the wounded warrior, his hand resting on his sidearm. The Cthar female looked directly into his eyes through his visor, showing no fear. Then, to his surprise, she spoke in heavily accented but understandable Terran standard. "Don't kill me, human," she said, her voice strong despite her condition. Then she uttered words that made him hesitate. "I'll warm your bed." Marcus froze. Something in her tone, in the formal way she pronounced the phrase, suggested this was more than just a desperate plea or an offer of sexual favors. It sounded like a ritual, a formality. "Sir," the soldier prompted again, weapon still aimed at the Cthar's head. Lieutenant Thorne approached, his posture rigid with disapproval. "Captain, we have orders. No prisoners." Marcus studied the Cthar warrior. Her eyes never wavered from his, filled with determination rather than fear. "Stand down," Marcus finally ordered. "We're taking this one in." "Captain," Thorne protested immediately. Command's orders were explicit. "I'm aware of the orders, Lieutenant." Marcus cut him off sharply. "But this one might have valuable intelligence. The Starsong clan is high in the Cthar hierarchy." Thorne's disapproval was evident even through his thermal gear. "Colonel Sterling won't like this, sir." "Noted, Lieutenant. Now secure the prisoner. We're moving out." As his men bound the Cthar warrior's wrists with thermal restraints, Marcus wondered about the strange phrase she had used. In 3 years of fighting on Volanis, he had never heard a Cthar offer surrender in such terms. There was something behind those words, something he was missing, and for some reason he couldn't quite identify. He was determined to find out what it was. The Terran Forward Operating Base was a collection of prefabricated structures designed to withstand Volanis' brutal climate. Built directly into an ice cliff for additional protection from both the elements and potential Cthar attacks, it hummed with the constant sound of heating systems fighting against the planet's natural cold. Marcus led the way as 2 soldiers escorted the Cthar prisoner through the base's main corridor. Personnel stopped to stare at the unusual sight, a living Cthar warrior in their midst. Most had only seen them as corpses or in intelligence briefings. "Take her to the secure medical bay," Marcus ordered. "I want her wounds treated before interrogation." "Sir," Thorne said, keeping his voice low, "I must formally register my objection to this course of action." Marcus stopped, and turned to face his second-in-command. "Your objection is noted, Lieutenant. Again, now carry out your orders." The medical bay was small but well-equipped. Dr. Eliza Chun raised her eyebrows when Marcus entered with the Cathar prisoner. "Well, this is a first," she remarked, already reaching for her diagnostic scanner. "Hey, live subject. Her name is—" Marcus began before realizing he didn't know. He turned to Cathar. "What's your name, warrior?" The Cathar female straightened, despite her wounds. "I am Lyra of House Star Song, second blade of the Northern Hunt." Her voice carried a melodic quality despite its strength, the Cathar accent giving the Terran words an almost musical cadence. "Treat her wounds, Dr. Chun," Marcus instructed, "but keep security measures in place. I'll be back to question her once she's stabilized." Dr. Chun nodded, already examining the violet blood seeping through Lyra's armor. Fascinating biological composition. The hemoglobin analog in their blood must have evolved specifically for this cold environment. Marcus left Lyra in the doctor's capable hands and headed to his quarters to file the inevitable non-standard action report. Colonel Sterling would demand an explanation, and Marcus wasn't entirely sure he had one that would satisfy his superior. 2 hours later, Marcus returned to the medical bay. Lyra had been treated and moved to a secure holding cell adjacent to the infirmary. Her armor had been removed and replaced with standard prisoner garments, which looked strangely inadequate on her tall, athletic frame. The thermal restraints remained on her wrists. "How is she, doctor?" Marcus asked. "Remarkable recovery rate," Dr. Chin replied, genuine scientific interest in her voice. "Their physiology is perfectly adapted to this environment. The wound that would have been critical for a human is already showing significant healing. Their cellular regeneration in cold conditions surpasses anything in our medical literature." Marcus nodded. "I need the room, doctor." Once they were alone, Marcus sat across from Lyra. She watched him with those unnerving turquoise eyes, her posture alert despite her recent injuries. "Why did you say what you said on the battlefield?" Marcus asked directly. "What did you mean by 'I'll warm your bed'?" Lyra studied him for a moment before responding. "It is Yul Varkesh, the honorable surrender, an ancient tradition among my people. When a warrior faces a superior opponent who has proven their strength and skill, they may offer Yul Varkesh rather than fight to the death." Marcus leaned forward. "And what exactly does this honorable surrender entail?" "The defeated acknowledges the victor's strength and offers service in exchange for life," Lyra explained, her voice carrying the formality of someone reciting something learned long ago. "In our ancient times, before space travel and modern weapons, when my ancestors fought on the ice plains, survival often meant sharing body heat. The phrase 'warming the bed' refers to this, a literal sharing of life heat, the most precious resource on a world of ice." She paused, watching his reaction. Over time, it evolved to mean complete submission to the victor's will, including physical intimacy, if demanded. It is a sacred oath of loyalty until death or formal release. Marcus sat back, processing this information. "So, you've sworn some kind of feudal loyalty oath to me, specifically?" "To you, Captain Marcus Vance of the Ghost Stalkers," Lyra confirmed. "By your mercy on the battlefield, you accepted my Yul Varkesh, whether you understood it or not." Marcus frowned. "How do you know my name and unit?" A small, proud smile touched Lyra's lips. "We are not ignorant savages, as your Colonel Sterling portrays us. We study our enemies. Your unit's reputation precedes you, as does your personal combat record. If this oath is so sacred, why offer it to an enemy? Wouldn't that be considered treason to your people?" Lyra's expression darkened. "Under normal circumstances, yes. But circumstances are far from normal." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "My unit was not ambushed by chance, Captain. We were betrayed by our own kind, specifically by the Shadow Claw faction led by Lord Forlag." Marcus knew of the Shadow Claw from intelligence briefings, a particularly aggressive Cathar clan that had been responsible for some of the bloodiest attacks on Terran mining operations. "Why would they betray their own?" he asked. "Politics. Power. The usual reasons," Lyra replied bitterly. How Starsong has long opposed Forlag's increasingly extreme tactics. We advocate for negotiated territory rights rather than total war with Terrans. This makes us inconvenient. Marcus considered her words carefully. Internal Kthar politics wasn't his area of expertise, but if she was telling the truth, this could be valuable intelligence. And how does Colonel Sterling fit into this? He asked, picking up on her earlier reference. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Your colonel and Lord Forlag share something in common. An interest in cryogems that goes beyond your official mining operations. They've been communicating secretly for months. That's a serious accusation, Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral despite his alarm. Do you have proof? Not with me, Lyra admitted, but I can help you find it. The next scheduled communication between them contains details of their joint operation, an operation that will cost many lives, both Kthar and Terran. Marcus stood up, needing time to process these claims. If true, they changed everything about this war. If false, it was an elaborate deception by a captured enemy. I'll consider what you've told me, he said finally. In the meantime, you'll remain here under guard. As he turned to leave, Lyra spoke again. Captain Vance, by accepting my Yul Varkash, you've taken responsibility for my life. In Kthar culture, this creates a bond that works both ways. I am obligated to serve you, but you are also obligated to protect me. Marcus paused at the door. Is that a threat, Lyra of House Starsong? No, she replied quietly. It's a warning. If Sterling discovers what I know, neither your authority nor our bond will protect me. The door closed behind Marcus, leaving him with far more questions than answers. Over the next several days, Marcus found himself returning to Lyra's cell regularly, ostensibly for interrogation. Each visit revealed more about Kthar culture and the complex politics of their society. Lyra, for her part, seemed genuinely willing to share information, at least certain information. Our civilization predates yours on this planet by over 1,000 years, she explained during one session. When your mining corporations first arrived, we attempted peaceful contact, but your executives saw only primitive aliens sitting on valuable resources. That's not the history we were taught, Marcus countered. History is written by those who benefit from its telling, Lyra replied. Ask yourself, why would a species adapted perfectly to this environment initiate hostilities with newcomers who could have brought trade and technology? The question lingered with Marcus long after he left her cell. During another session, he brought star charts of the Volani's system, testing her knowledge and truthfulness. Your maps are incomplete, she pointed out immediately, indicating several areas. There are Kthar settlements here, and here, all civilian, non-military. And these underground waterways connect much of the northern hemisphere. They're how we move without detection by your aerial surveillance. If I were to believe you, Marcus said carefully, what exactly is this plot between Sterling and Forlag? Lyra's expression became grave. The great cryogem deposit at Frostholm Ridge. It's not just a mining site. It contains the oldest and most concentrated gems on the planet. When properly harvested and aligned, they can store and amplify energy beyond anything your scientists have documented. A weapon? Marcus asked, alarmed. Potentially, or a power source of immense value. Sterling provides the extraction technology. Forlag provides access and eliminates opposition from both sides. And the next communication? 3 days from now. They use a quantum encrypted channel, but the transmission location will be the Southern Communications Array. I can help you intercept and decode it. Marcus studied her carefully. Despite everything, he found himself increasingly inclined to believe her. Whether it was her consistent story, the specific details she provided that checked out against known intelligence, or something more intangible about her demeanor, he wasn't sure. Why are you really helping us, Lyra? Is it just this Yul Varkash oath? Or is there more? Lyra was silent for a long moment before answering. My younger sister was at our settlement near the Eastern Territories when Shadow Claw forces attacked. They claimed it was Terran forces, but we found Shadow Claw weapons. She died, along with 300 civilians. Her turquoise eyes bore into his. Vengeance is also sacred to my people, Captain. The next day, An unexpected development forced Marcus's hand. Colonel Sterling arrived at the forward base for a routine inspection. Marcus was summoned to Sterling's temporary office immediately. The colonel was a tall, imposing man with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthless efficiency. His combat record was impressive, but there had always been whispers about his methods. "Captain Vance," Sterling greeted him without warmth. "I've been reviewing your recent reports. Or rather, what's absent from them." "Sir," Marcus maintained a neutral expression. "Don't play dumb, Vance. You've been harboring a Cathar prisoner for nearly a week. Against direct orders. The prisoner has been providing valuable intelligence, sir," Marcus replied. "Information that could significantly impact our operations." Sterling's eyes narrowed. "Lieutenant Thorne has kept me well informed of your interrogation techniques. Seems rather conversational for extracting enemy intelligence." Marcus felt a flash of anger at Thorne's betrayal, though he should have expected it. Different approaches yield different results, Colonel. The Cathar prisoner responds to respectful dialogue. "How quaint," Sterling said dismissively. "I'll be taking over the interrogation personally. Your unit ships out tomorrow for the northern perimeter. With all due respect, sir, the prisoner has established a rapport specifically with me. Changing interrogators now could jeopardize." "That wasn't a suggestion, Captain," Sterling cut him off sharply. "I want a full report of everything she's told you by 0800 tomorrow. After that, she's my concern, not yours." Marcus saluted stiffly. "Yes, sir." As he left Sterling's office, his mind raced. If even half of what Lyra had told him was true, handing her over to Sterling would be signing her death warrant, and possibly dooming many others, both Cathar and Terran. He had less than 12 hours to decide where his true loyalties lay. That night, Marcus made his decision. He approached the medical bay during shift change, when security would be at its minimum. Dr. Chin was still there, reviewing data on her tablet. "Doctor," Marcus acknowledged her with a nod. "Captain," she replied, studying his face carefully. "You look like a man with a plan he's not sure about." Marcus had always appreciated the doctor's perceptiveness. "I need to speak with the prisoner." "Alone." Dr. Chin glanced at the security cameras. "The monitoring system is due for its daily diagnostic reset in about 3 minutes. It usually takes about 5 minutes to complete." Their eyes met in understanding. "Thank you, Doctor." "I never saw you," she replied, gathering her tablet and heading for the door. "And, Captain, whatever you're planning, be careful." Once alone, Marcus quickly entered Lyra's cell. She was awake, as if expecting him. "Sterling is here," Marcus said without preamble. "He's taking over your interrogation tomorrow." Lyra's expression remained calm, but her eyes betrayed her concern. "Then I am already dead, and many others will follow." "Not if we leave tonight," Marcus said, the words committing him to a course of action that, just days ago, would have been unthinkable. "I need to know if you've been telling me the truth, Lyra. Everything hinges on that." "I have sworn Yul Varkesh," she replied solemnly. "Deception would violate that oath in the deepest way. Everything I've told you is truth." Marcus made his final decision. "Then we need to stop whatever Sterling and Forlag are planning. I'll arrange transport and create a diversion. Be ready in 1 hour." As he turned to leave, Lyra caught his arm. Her touch was surprisingly warm for a species adapted to cold. "You understand what you're doing?" she asked quietly. "By your standards, this is treason." "By my standards, it's the right thing to do," Marcus replied. "And sometimes that's more important than orders." An hour later, alarms blared throughout the base as a small explosion rocked the eastern perimeter, a diversion created by carefully placed charges from the Ghost Stalker's own arsenal. In the confusion, Marcus managed to get Lyra to the vehicle bay. They commandeered a snow crawler, a rugged, enclosed vehicle designed for Valanis's harsh terrain. They were nearly at the perimeter when Lieutenant Thorne appeared, weapon drawn. "I knew you'd try something like this, Captain," he said, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Step away from the vehicle and the prisoner." "You don't understand what's happening, Thorne," Marcus replied, his own weapon still holstered. "Sterling is working with the enemy. He's planning something that will cost Terran lives." "More traitorous lies," Thorne spat. "The Cathar has poisoned your mind. Now step away, or I will fire. Marcus saw the conviction in Thorn's eyes. The lieutenant truly believed he was doing his duty. But there was no time to convince him. I'm sorry, Thorn, Marcus said, then moved with the speed and precision that had made him a legendary combat officer. Before Thorn could react, Marcus had disarmed him and delivered a precise blow that rendered him unconscious. He will hunt us, Lyra observed as Marcus dragged Thorn's unconscious form behind some storage containers. Yes, he will, Marcus agreed grimly. Let's make sure we're far away when he wakes up. They sped away from the base into the frozen wilderness of Valanis, the night illuminated only by the planet's 3 moons and the occasional aurora that danced across the star-filled sky. The vast, frozen landscape of Valanis stretched before them, beautiful and deadly. The snow crawler pushed through the deep snow, its treads designed specifically for this hostile environment. Inside the vehicle, the heating system worked at maximum capacity, creating a bubble of warmth against the lethal cold outside. Sterling will have alerted all Terran outposts by now, Marcus said, eyes fixed on the terrain ahead. And I assume Forlag's forces will join the hunt once they're informed. Forlag's territory begins beyond those ice formations, Lyra confirmed, pointing to jagged crystalline structures on the horizon. But there are ways through the terrain that only Cthar know, ways that won't appear on your maps. Marcus glanced at her. Then I guess I'm trusting your navigation skills. A small smile touched Lyra's lips. As I'm trusting your driving skills, Captain. Marcus, he corrected. I think we're past military formalities at this point. Marcus, she repeated, the name sounding different with her accent, almost lyrical. For the next several hours, they traversed the frozen wilderness, Lyra guiding them through hidden passages between ice mountains and across frozen lakes that weren't marked on Terran charts. Twice they spotted Terran aerial patrols and had to take cover in ice caves until the danger passed. We should stop soon, Lyra eventually suggested. Even with your vehicle, traveling during peak frost time is suicide. The temperature drops low enough to affect even your most hardened equipment. Marcus checked the external temperature gauge, which was already approaching dangerous levels. You know a safe place? There's an abandoned Cthar hunting shelter in the next valley. It will provide adequate protection. The shelter turned out to be a structure built directly into the side of an ice cliff, almost invisible until they were right upon it. Inside, it was simple but functional. A single room with stone sleeping platforms and an ancient heating system designed to burn the oil from local ice fauna. Not exactly luxury accommodations, Marcus commented as he secured the entrance behind them. But it will keep us alive, Lyra replied, already working to activate the heating system, which is all that matters in the Valanis night. As warmth slowly began to fill the shelter, they took stock of their supplies. The snow crawler contained standard emergency rations, enough for perhaps 5 days if they were careful. Lyra examined the shelter's storage areas and found some preserved Cthar provisions that were still usable. So, Marcus said as they sat facing each other in the gradually warming shelter, what's our next move? The Frostholm Ridge mining complex is still at least 2 days' journey from here, even with the crawler. We need to intercept Sterling and Forlag's communication first, Lyra replied. Without proof, we'll never convince anyone of their conspiracy. There's a relay station half a day's journey from here. We can tap into the quantum network from there. Marcus nodded, then asked the question that had been on his mind since their escape. Why did you really offer me Yul Varkesh, Lyra? You could have fought to the death like the others. Lyra's turquoise eyes studied him for a long moment. Because I saw something in you that day on the battlefield. Something different from other Terrans I've encountered. There was hesitation in your eyes. Doubt. She paused. Was I wrong? Marcus considered his answer carefully. No, he finally admitted. This war, the longer it goes on, the less sense it makes. We came to mine resources, not exterminate a species. Somewhere along the way, the mission changed. War has its own momentum, Lyra said softly. Once started, it finds reasons to continue. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Marcus Vance, what will you do if we succeed? If we stop Sterling and Forlag? It was a question he hadn't allowed himself to consider fully. I don't know, he admitted. I can't go back. Not after this. I'll be branded a traitor. Among my people, there's a concept called Kurvin, the path remade, Lyra said. It means that sometimes, to find your true path, you must first leave all paths behind. Their eyes met across the small space, and Marcus felt an unexpected connection, a bridge across the vast differences between them. In the soft glow of the heating system, Lyra's pale blue skin seemed to shimmer, her features striking in their alien beauty. The moment was broken by a sudden howling outside, the wind picking up as the Volani's night deepened. The temperature within the shelter, while no longer life-threatening, was still far from comfortable for a human. Lyra noticed his involuntary shiver. You should rest, she suggested. Thar require less sleep than humans. I will keep watch. We both need rest, Marcus countered. We'll take shifts. Lyra seemed about to argue, then nodded in acceptance. Very well. You sleep first. Marcus settled onto one of the stone platforms, wrapping himself in a thermal blanket from their supplies. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him as the cold seeped into his bones. After watching him shiver for several minutes, Lyra spoke. Your thermal adaptation is insufficient for these conditions, even with your gear. I'll manage, Marcus replied through clenched teeth. Lyra stood and approached his platform. There's a more practical solution. Without further explanation, she lay down beside him and pulled the thermal blanket over both of them. Her body, significantly warmer than his own, immediately began to radiate heat. What are you doing? Marcus asked, startled by her proximity. Warming your bed, Lyra replied simply. As promised. The literalness of her response, contrasted with the intimate position they now found themselves in, struck Marcus as unexpectedly funny. A short laugh escaped him. Did I say something amusing? Lyra asked, genuinely curious. No, it's just, Marcus tried to explain, then gave up. Thank you for the warmth. As Lyra's body heat gradually thawed his frozen limbs, Marcus found himself increasingly aware of her presence. The subtle scent that reminded him of frost-covered evergreens, the slight rhythm of her breathing, the strange smoothness of her skin where it touched his. You should sleep now, Lyra said softly. We have difficult days ahead. Surprisingly, with her warmth beside him, Marcus found himself drifting off, more at peace than he had been in years. The next morning, they set out for the relay station. The journey was tense, with frequent stops to avoid detection by both Terran and Kthar patrols. By midday, they reached the small, automated facility nestled between two ice ridges. There won't be personnel, Marcus explained as they approached cautiously. These relay stations are fully automated, with maintenance visits once a month at most. That works in our favor, Lyra observed. But there will still be security measures. Marcus nodded. I can bypass the basic systems with my access codes. They might not have been revoked yet, especially if Sterling is trying to keep my defection quiet to avoid questions. His assessment proved correct. While his highest-level access had been terminated, his basic engineering credentials remained active, enough to get them inside the facility. Once at the central console, Marcus connected his personal datapad and began navigating through the communications network. Sterling will be using a heavily encrypted channel, he murmured, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. But if we can identify the transmission origin and destination. There, Lyra pointed to a data stream on the screen. That pattern, it matches what I've seen in captured Terran communications. And the destination coordinates are in Forlag's territory. Marcus focused on the identified channel, applying a series of decryption algorithms from his intelligence training. This is military-grade encryption. It could take hours to break, and we don't have. Wait, Lyra interrupted. Look at the subcarrier frequency. It's oscillating in a specific pattern. Marcus adjusted the display to highlight the pattern she indicated. Some kind of secondary code? Thar communication often uses harmonic patterns that would seem like random noise to your systems, Lyra explained. It's an authentication signature. If I can isolate it. She took the datapad from him, her long fingers moving with surprising dexterity across the human interface. Minutes later, Parts of the message began to appear on the screen. Seismic charges positioned at primary support columns. Massive collapse. Blame Cathar extremists. Martial law justified. Exclusive control. Energy amplification potential confirmed. They're planning to collapse the Frostholm Ridge mining complex. Marcus realized, horror growing as he read more of the partially decrypted message. With hundreds of Terran miners still inside. And blame it on a Cathar terrorist attack, Lyra added grimly. Creating the justification for a full military response against all Cathar, not just warrior clans. When? Marcus demanded, frantically searching through the rest of the message. Lyra pointed to a time code. Converting to your calendar. Tomorrow. During peak shift. Marcus quickly downloaded the partial message to his datapad. We need to warn both sides. If we can get this to Terran High Command and your clan leaders. An alarm suddenly blared through the facility. On the security monitor, they saw a Terran patrol vehicle approaching. They've tracked us, Marcus said grimly, gathering their equipment. We need to move. Now. They barely made it back to their snow crawler before the patrol vehicle came into view. As they sped away, laser fire erupted behind them, scoring the ice where they had been moments before. They're jamming communications, Marcus noted as he tried to access the emergency bands. We can't send this data remotely. Then we go to Frostholm Ridge, Lyra said decisively. We stop this ourselves. Marcus nodded grimly, pushing the crawler to its maximum speed as they raced across the frozen landscape, pursued by those who had once been his comrades. The journey to Frostholm Ridge was a harrowing game of cat and mouse. Multiple Terran patrols converged on their position, forcing them to abandon the relatively direct route in favor of the treacherous ice canyons that snaked through the region. Twice they nearly lost the crawler to hidden crevasses. Once, they had to abandon the vehicle temporarily and proceed on foot when aerial drones swept the area. They're throwing everything they have at us, Marcus observed grimly as they crouched behind an ice formation, watching a Terran scout ship pass overhead. Sterling must be desperate to stop us. It confirms we're right about their plan, Lyra replied. We're getting close to the mining complex. We can approach from the eastern access tunnels. They're less monitored. As nightfall approached, they finally caught sight of Frostholm Ridge, an enormous complex carved into a massive glacier. Artificial lights illuminated vast sections of the ice cliff, highlighting the scale of the Terran mining operation. Transport vessels moved constantly between landing pads and the complex's many entrances. There's no way we're getting in through any official entrance, Marcus said, studying the facility through his field glasses. Security will be at maximum after Sterling's alert about us. We don't need to, Lyra replied. There's another way. She pointed to a seemingly solid section of the ice cliff far from the main complex. The Cathar worked these ice formations for generations before your people arrived. There are ancient tunnels that your scanners wouldn't detect, tunnels that lead directly to what you now call the primary excavation chamber. With no better option, they abandoned the crawler in a concealed location and proceeded on foot. The temperature was dropping rapidly as Volanis's brief day gave way to its long, brutal night. Even with his thermal gear, Marcus felt the cold seeping into his body. Lyra, however, moved with the ease of someone in her natural environment. Here, she eventually said, stopping before what appeared to be a solid ice wall. Her hands ran over the surface with practiced precision until she found what she was seeking, a nearly invisible seam in the ice. With a firm push on a specific point, a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel. How did you know this was here? Marcus asked as they entered the ancient passage. I was born not far from here, Lyra explained as she led the way through the dim tunnel. Before the war, these tunnels were part of our ceremonial routes. The ice here has specific properties. It preserves heat signatures for generations. The path ahead will have been walked by thousands of my ancestors. The tunnel gradually widened as they progressed deeper into the glacier. Strange, luminescent patterns in the ice provided just enough light to navigate by. After what seemed like hours of careful progress, they began to hear the distant hum of machinery. We're approaching the mining operation, Marcus whispered. From here, we need to locate the central support columns where the charges would be most effective. And Sterling and Forelag, Lyra added grimly. They'll want to oversee this personally. They emerged from the ancient tunnel into a maintenance shaft that was clearly part of the Terran mining operation. Marcus quickly oriented himself using the facility schematics he'd studied during previous mission briefings. The primary excavation chamber is this way, he indicated. It's where the largest concentration of pure cryogems has been found. They move cautiously through the maintenance tunnels, avoiding the occasional worker or security patrol. The facility was massive, with multiple levels descending deep into the glacier. As they approached the central mining area, the hum of machinery grew louder, accompanied by the distinctive resonance of cryogems being processed. Finally, they reached an observation platform overlooking the main excavation chamber, an enormous cavern hollowed out of the ice, where dozens of mining drones extracted the precious gems from the walls, while Terran workers supervised the operation from various control stations. There, Lyra whispered, pointing to a group near the chamber's center. Even from a distance, Marcus recognized Colonel Sterling's tall figure. Beside him stood a Cathar warrior whose elaborate armor and commanding presence could only be Lord Forelag. They're inspecting something, Marcus observed, using his field glasses for a closer look. Devices attached to the main support pillars. The seismic charges, Lyra confirmed. We're almost too late. They watched as Sterling consulted something on his datapad, then nodded to Forelag. The Cathar Lord gestured to his warriors, who began to withdraw from the chamber. They're leaving, Marcus whispered. They must be preparing to detonate soon. We need to get down there, Lyra said urgently. Can you disable the charges? Maybe if I can access the detonation codes. But first, we need to deal with Sterling and Forelag. They made their way down to the chamber level, using service ladders and maintenance passageways to avoid detection. As they neared the central area, they split up, Marcus heading toward the control station where Sterling now stood alone, Lyra moving to intercept Forelag before he could leave the chamber. Marcus approached silently, weapon drawn. When he was just meters away, Sterling sensed his presence and turned. Captain Vance, the colonel said, showing no surprise. I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it. Step away from the controls, Colonel, Marcus ordered, keeping his weapon trained on Sterling. Sterling smiled coldly. You have no idea what you're interfering with, Vance. This goes far beyond a simple mining operation. The energy potential in these concentrated cryogems could power our entire fleet for decades, or weapons that could end this war in days. By murdering hundreds of your own people, civilians, Marcus countered, and triggering an all-out war with the Cathar? Necessary sacrifices, Sterling replied dismissively. The Cathar are a primitive species sitting on resources that could advance human civilization by centuries. Their extinction is inevitable. I'm simply accelerating the process. Not all of them think that way, Marcus said. There are factions who want peace, who were open to cooperation before we started shooting. Sterling's eyes narrowed. You've been thoroughly compromised by that Cathar female. Did she seduce you with her alien ways, Captain? Make you forget your loyalty to your own species? Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Sterling smiled. Too late, he said, pressing a command on his datapad. The countdown has begun. In 15 minutes, this entire section of the glacier will collapse. Nothing can stop it now. Across the chamber, Lyra had cornered Forelag near one of the exit tunnels. The Cathar Lord was larger than she was, his armor more elaborate, but Lyra moved with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. Lyra of House Starsong, Forelag said in their native tongue, his voice deep and contemptuous. The traitor who runs with humans. The only traitor here is you, Forelag, Lyra replied, circling her opponent. Conspiring with Terrans to murder your own people. Forelag drew a ceremonial blade, a curved weapon of black ice metal that gleamed in the chamber's light. I am securing our future. The strong will survive. The weak, like your pathetic house, will perish. Then let us test our strength, Lyra challenged, drawing her own weapon. Krelvor ADH, the duel of truth. Or have you abandoned that tradition along with your honor? Forlag's eyes narrowed at the formal challenge. By Kthar law, he could not refuse without losing all standing among his warriors. Very well, Krelvor ADH it is. Your death will be witnessed. They engaged in combat, their blades meeting with explosive force. Lyra was quicker, but Forlag's strength was formidable. Around them, both Kthar and Terran personnel scattered, recognizing the sacred duel that could not be interrupted. Meanwhile, Marcus was locked in his own battle with Sterling. The colonel had drawn his sidearm, and they exchanged fire, taking cover behind mining equipment. "You can't stop this, Vance," Sterling called out. "The charges are on an encrypted deadman switch. Kill me, and they detonate immediately." Marcus knew he had to reach the control station. The mining complex's systems might be able to override the detonation sequence if he could gain access. But Sterling stood between him and the controls, and the countdown continued. A sudden cry of pain drew his attention. Across the chamber, he saw Lyra falter, blood flowing from a wound in her side. Forlag pressed his advantage, his blade slicing toward her throat, only to be deflected at the last moment as Lyra executed a desperate counter, drawing on her remaining strength. But it was clear she was outmatched in her wounded state. Without help, she would fall to Forlag's next attack. Marcus faced an impossible choice: continue trying to reach the controls and possibly save hundreds, or go to Lyra's aid. In that moment of hesitation, Sterling emerged from cover, weapon aimed directly at Marcus. "Your alien whore is going to die, Vance. Then you. Then everyone else in this facility. A tragedy that will unite humanity against the savage Kthar once and for all." Something snapped inside Marcus. With lightning reflexes, he fired 3 precise shots. The first knocked Sterling's weapon from his hand. The second and third hit the colonel in the shoulder and leg, dropping him to the ground. "I need the deactivation codes, Sterling," Marcus demanded, rushing to the fallen officer and pressing his weapon against Sterling's head. "Now!" Sterling laughed through his pain. "Go to hell, traitor." Across the chamber, Forlag had Lyra pinned against a crystal formation, his blade inching toward her throat despite her desperate resistance. "You're going to die knowing your human pet failed," Forlag taunted in their language. "Frostholm will collapse, and the Terrans will blame our people. Their vengeance will be absolute." Lyra's strength was fading, the wound in her side sapping her energy. But as Forlag pressed his advantage, his focus entirely on delivering the killing blow, Lyra made her decision. Kthar tradition demanded she fight to the death once Krelvor ADH was declared. To do otherwise would dishonor her house for generations. But somewhere in the ice tunnels and frozen wastelands with Marcus, something had changed within her. Some traditions were worth breaking. With a sudden move that surprised Forlag, Lyra disengaged from the duel, rolling away from his blade and toward the fallen Terran weapon she had spotted nearby. In one fluid motion, she seized it and fired at Forlag's exposed flank. The Kthar Lord roared in pain and anger. "You dishonor the sacred duel," he bellowed. "Your house is forever shamed." "I choose life over outdated honor," Lyra replied, firing again to keep him at bay as she retreated toward Marcus. Nearby, Marcus had secured Sterling but couldn't extract the deactivation codes. The countdown on the nearest display showed less than 10 minutes remaining. "Marcus," Lyra called as she approached, still keeping her weapon trained on Forlag. "The cryogems, they're connected to the detonators." Marcus looked at the complex setup surrounding the largest concentration of gems. Understanding dawned. They're using the gem's energy amplification properties to boost the explosive yield, which means they're linked directly to the detonation system, Lyra continued. "If we can disrupt the alignment." Marcus grasped her plan immediately. "We could cause a feedback loop in the system." They moved quickly to the central gem cluster, where an intricate arrangement of the largest cryogems was connected to various monitoring devices and, crucially, to the detonators placed around the chamber. "Cover me," Marcus told Lyra as he began working on the control panel. Sterling had managed to drag himself to a communication terminal and was barking orders, summoning security to their position. Forelag, wounded but still dangerous, was rallying his warriors. "Whatever you're doing, do it fast," Lyra urged, firing periodically to keep their enemies at bay. Marcus's fingers flew over the controls, his engineering training coming into play. They've aligned the gems to channel energy in a specific harmonic pattern. If I reverse the polarity on these control crystals, the gems began to pulse with an eerie blue light, their resonance changing pitch. Around the chamber, the attached detonators began to spark and smoke. "It's working," Marcus exclaimed. "The feedback is overloading the detonation system." Sterling, realizing what was happening, made a desperate lunge for another control terminal. "No, you'll destroy everything." Lyra intercepted him, knocking him back with a powerful blow. "Not everything, just your plans." The detonators were now clearly malfunctioning, their status lights flickering from red to dead as the feedback loop severed their connection to the control system. But the process had an unexpected side effect. The massive energy running through the gem cluster was becoming unstable. "We need to get out of here," Marcus realized, reading the rapidly changing energy signatures. "The gems are going critical. When they blow, they'll take out this chamber, but not the whole facility." They made their way toward one of the exit tunnels, but found their path blocked by Forelag and several of his warriors. "You will not leave here alive," the Cthar Lord declared, his weapon raised despite his injuries. "The gems are going to detonate," Lyra warned in their language. "Anyone who stays will die." "Then we die with honor, traitor," Forelag replied. "Something you know nothing about." From behind them came Sterling's voice, strained but determined. "Kill them all." The chamber erupted into chaos as Terran security forces and Cthar warriors converged on their position. Marcus and Lyra fought back-to-back, their movements in perfect synchronization as if they had trained together for years rather than days. The gem cluster's glow had intensified to a blinding blue-white, and the chamber began to shake with increasingly violent tremors. "We're out of time," Marcus shouted over the din of battle and the screaming alarms. Lyra spotted a maintenance shaft nearby. "There, that leads to the old tunnels." They fought their way to the shaft, providing cover for each other. As they reached it, a massive section of the ceiling collapsed, separating them from their pursuers, but also trapping Sterling and Forelag on the wrong side, near the increasingly unstable gem cluster. "Vance!" Sterling called out, genuine fear in his voice for the first time. "You can't leave me here." Marcus hesitated, his ingrained sense of duty warring with everything he had learned about Sterling's treachery. "He would not show you the same mercy," Lyra said quietly. Before Marcus could decide, another ceiling section collapsed, making any rescue attempt impossible. The last they saw of Sterling and Forelag was the two enemies, temporarily united by fear, desperately trying to find an escape route as the chamber crumbled around them. Marcus and Lyra crawled through the maintenance shaft as quickly as possible, the structure threatening to collapse with each passing second. Behind them, they heard a massive explosion, followed by the distinctive sound of ice and rock giving way. "Faster," Marcus urged as the tunnel began to collapse behind them. They emerged into one of the ancient Cthar passages just as the maintenance shaft disappeared in a cloud of ice fragments and dust. The explosion's shockwave hurled them forward, sending them tumbling deeper into the tunnel. For several minutes, they lay there in the semi-darkness, covered in ice dust, breathing heavily as the rumbling gradually subsided. "Are you hurt?" Marcus finally asked, reaching for Lyra. "Nothing new," she replied, wincing as she sat up. Her earlier wound had reopened during their escape, and fresh violet blood stained her side. Marcus helped her to a sitting position, leaning her against the tunnel wall. "We need to keep moving. Find a way to the surface." Lyra nodded weakly. The tunnel continues for another kilometer before it reaches the outside. She attempted to stand, but faltered. Without hesitation, Marcus lifted her into his arms. "Then we go together." The journey through the ancient tunnel was arduous. The explosion had damaged sections of the passage, forcing them to climb over debris and squeeze through narrowed portions. The temperature dropped steadily as they moved away from the mining complex, and Marcus's thermal gear was operating at its limits. Eventually, they reached a point where the tunnel had partially collapsed, leaving only a small opening that led to the outside. Bitter wind howled through the gap, bringing with it snow and the promise of the deadly Volani's night. "We can't go out there," Marcus realized, checking his environmental sensors. "The temperature is dropping too fast. We'd freeze before finding shelter." "Then we stay here," Lyra decided. She looked around the tunnel section they were in. "This portion is stable. We can wait out the night." They settled in the most protected corner of the tunnel. Marcus used his emergency kit to treat Lyra's wound as best he could, applying biofoam to stop the bleeding and a thermal bandage to retain heat. "How bad is it?" Lyra asked, watching his face as he worked. "You'll live," he replied with forced lightness, "assuming we don't freeze to death." The tunnel grew colder as the night deepened. Marcus activated their emergency beacon, but with the facility in chaos and a storm raging outside, rescue seemed unlikely anytime soon. "Your temperature is dropping," Lyra observed, noticing his increasing shivers despite his attempts to hide them. "I'm fine," he insisted, though they both knew it was a lie. His thermal gear, damaged during their escape, was losing efficiency rapidly. Lyra moved closer to him, wrapping her arms around his body. "Don't argue," she said before he could protest. "My body generates more heat than yours. This is survival, nothing more." But as she held him, sharing her warmth in the frozen darkness, they both knew it had become something more than mere survival. In the silent hours that followed, as they clung to each other in the ancient tunnel, the barriers between them, species, culture, loyalty, seemed to fade into insignificance. "Why did you choose to help me?" Marcus asked softly. "You broke your sacred dual tradition to come to my aid." Lyra was quiet for a long moment before answering. "There's an older tradition among my people. Older than Krelvor ADH, older than house loyalties. We call it Sharvi Akai, the bond of shared breath. When two beings face death together and choose to share their last breath rather than face the darkness alone, they become something new, something neither could be alone." Her turquoise eyes met his in the dim light. "I chose a new bond over an old tradition. I chose you, Marcus Vance." Words seemed inadequate in response. Instead, Marcus gently touched her face, tracing the delicate ridges that marked her Kthar heritage. When their lips met, it was neither Terran nor Kthar who initiated the kiss. Just two beings who had found something unexpected amid war and ice. They spent the night wrapped in each other's arms, sharing warmth, stories, and a growing certainty that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Morning brought weak sunlight filtering through the tunnel's exit and the distant sound of vehicles. Marcus cautiously approached the opening and saw a mixed group of Terran and Kthar personnel moving methodically across the ice field, clearly searching for survivors. "Someone got our message," he said with relief. Lyra joined him at the tunnel entrance, leaning against him for support. "Or someone believed your data transmission. The question is, are they here to help us or execute us? Only one way to find out." They emerged cautiously from the tunnel, Marcus supporting Lyra as they made their way onto the ice field. Almost immediately, they were spotted. Vehicles converged on their position, and they found themselves surrounded by a mix of Terran soldiers and Kthar warriors, all with weapons ready, but not yet aimed directly at them. From the lead vehicle emerged two figures: a senior Terran officer Marcus recognized as General Hammond, and a regal Kthar female whose elaborate armor marked her as a high-ranking clan leader. "Captain Vance," General Hammond greeted him formally. "You've created quite the diplomatic situation." "Mother," Lyra said simultaneously, addressing the Kthar leader with evident surprise. "Daughter," the Kthar matriarch replied, her expression unreadable. "Your message reached us, along with the Terran data transmission. It seems we have much to discuss, all of us." General Hammond nodded. "The destruction at Frostholm has raised significant questions. Questions that coincide with intelligence we recently received about Colonel Sterling's unauthorized activities. He studied Marcus carefully. You two appear to be at the center of this situation. We can explain everything, sir, Marcus began. I'm sure you can, Captain, Hammond replied, and you'll have that opportunity. For now, you both need medical attention. As they were escorted to the vehicles, Marcus and Lyra exchanged a glance, communicating without words. Whatever trials lay ahead, they had survived the impossible together. That would have to be enough for now. The following weeks were a whirlwind of debriefings, medical treatments, and diplomatic negotiations. The partial collapse of Frostholm Ridge had become a flashpoint, not for escalating the war, as Sterling had planned, but for questioning its very foundations. The evidence Marcus and Lyra had gathered, combined with data recovered from the mining facility systems, painted a damning picture of Sterling and Forlag's conspiracy. While both had perished in the explosion, their legacy was a newfound suspicion on both sides about who had really been driving the conflict. Marcus found himself in an unusual position. Technically a deserter who had disobeyed direct orders, but also the key witness in a case that implicated several high-ranking officers in what amounted to war crimes. He spent days in secured debriefing rooms, recounting every detail of his discoveries and actions. Lyra faced similar scrutiny from her people. Her decision to break the sacred duel with Forlag was a serious transgression in Cthar culture, but the revelation of Forlag's treachery had created division among the clans about how to interpret her actions. For nearly 2 weeks, they were kept separate, each dealing with the consequences of their choices within their own cultural contexts. But eventually, as the diplomatic talks between Terrans and Cthar progressed, they were brought together again, this time as unofficial advisors to the peace process. They need us, Lyra explained as they walked along a fortified corridor in a neutral facility that had been established for the negotiations. We're the only ones who truly understand both sides. Marcus nodded. They're calling it the Frostholm Accords. Initial resource sharing agreements, demilitarized zones around the major mining operations. It's a start. And us? Lyra asked quietly. What happens to us when this is finished? It was the question that had hung between them since their rescue. Marcus had been officially pardoned for his actions, given the extraordinary circumstances, but his military career was effectively over. Lyra had been formally recognized for exposing Forlag's treachery, but many Cthar still viewed her association with a Terran as troubling. I've been offered a position, Marcus revealed. Civilian advisor to the new joint mining operation they're planning. They need someone who understands both the technical aspects and the cultural sensitivities. Cultural sensitivities, Lyra repeated with a small smile. Is that what they're calling it now? What about you? Marcus asked. Your mother mentioned something about restoring your position in House Starsong. Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. My house needs someone who can navigate this new reality. Someone who understands Terrans as more than just enemies. She met his eyes directly. It would mean staying on Volanis. Funny coincidence, Marcus said, taking her hand. My new position would require the same. As they stood together, their future uncertain but full of possibility, Lyra leaned closer. Do you remember what I said that day on the battlefield? The words that started all of this. Don't kill me, human. I'll warm your bed, Marcus quoted softly. I remember. I've been thinking about that promise, Lyra said, her turquoise eyes holding his. Perhaps it's time I fulfilled it properly. Not as a defeated warrior to a victor, or as a survival necessity in a frozen tunnel. What did you have in mind? Marcus asked, his voice low. Among my people, there's a ritual for those who wish to formally join their lives, Lyra explained. It begins with the words, I offer my warmth until the final frost. It would be unprecedented between our species. But then, much of what we've done has been unprecedented. Marcus gently touched the side of her face, tracing the delicate ridges that he had come to find so beautiful. I'm getting used to unprecedented. Outside the facility's windows, Volanis's brief summer had begun to melt small patches of the eternal ice, revealing glimpses of the ancient rock beneath. Like the planet itself, the relationship between Terrans and Cthar was revealing new layers, new possibilities that had been frozen beneath the surface of conflict. I offer my warmth until the final frost. Marcus Vance, Lyra said formally, speaking the ritual words with quiet intensity. Marcus smiled, learning as he went. And I offer mine in return, Lyra of House Starsong. As their lips met, sealing a promise that transcended species and traditions, the first true sunset in months painted the ice fields of Alanis in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere in the distance, a joint team of Terran and Cathar scientists made a discovery that would change both their civilizations. But here, in this moment, two beings who had found each other across the stars had made the most important discovery of all, that even in the coldest places in the universe, warmth could be found if you were brave enough to seek it.